First of all, I have to apologize for my French accent and my bad English, but I do hope that you will be able to understand the content of this presentation, which deals with the first result, actually, of my current research. This is a collective research on the French presidential election, presidential election campaign last year. And I would like first to make a kind of quite long introduction about the concept of political participation, because this is this is one of the most difficult concepts to define in political science. I don't know if you are a member of political science or economics or philosophy, but I have thought that this is maybe a good thing to start with some theoretical concepts, because as we will see in a few minutes, the idea of online political participation raises a lot of big problems. And this is very difficult to study online political participation because you have to define kind of categories, items, and nobody in the academic literature do agree on which kind of actions and activities can be considered as political participation. So as you can see on the first slide, I put an interesting citation of maybe someone you do know, because it's Nicolas Sarkozy, who is from Brussels Universität. And he said in communication and media studies, but also in many other fields and disciplines, participation is still used to mean everything and nothing. Remains structurally under-theorized, and its intrinsically political nature as part of a democratic ideological struggle on the nature of democracy remains unknowledge. So this is the first thing to bear in mind when you work on political participation. This is a very blurred concept, but of course there are still attempts to define political participation, and of course we have a very classical definition which dated from 70s. The most classical definition of political participation is the one given by Sidney Weber and Nye, and I put it also on the third slide, because they defined political participation as those activities by private citizens that are more or less directly aimed at influencing is the word which is the most important in the sentence, the selection of governmental personnel and or the action they take. But other similar definitions do exist, such as, for example, those of Lester Milbrath, which is not on the slide, or Max Kaz. And all of these definitions stress the instrumental character of political participation. It's an action to influence selection of government or political outcomes. However, since then, the forms of political participation have not stopped growing, and we have, it's not on the slide, sorry, but we have the first distinction between what we call conventional participation, such as the vote or to be member of a party, and this is basic things that people on political science can perfectly understand, but it's just the beginning. So first distinction between conventional modes of participation, such as vote or party membership, and what we call unconventional participation, like petitions or demonstration. And this first distinction dated back from the 70s. And more recently, as you can see in the slide, we have had an extension or an expansion, I don't know, of political participation with civil activities such as volunteering and social engagement, and it's it dates, or it dated from the work, maybe you know this important work, it's the work of Robert Putnam, Building Alone, and he stressed the importance of community engagement, to be engaged in an association, and he developed the concept of social capital, for example. And we can see in in other terms that participation research extended in the realm of uninstitutionalized participation, like, again, signing petition, joining boycott, going to demonstration, and a little bit later, joining a citizen action group. So at the end, we have a lot of activities which can be considered as political participation. And for example, we have an author whose name is Jan van Deth, who counted the number of activities related to political participation, and he counted more than 70 activities that can be considered as political participation. So from then on, we try to make some categorization, and there are a lot of categorization, sorry. One of the most famous is the one given by Parry and Hall at the beginning of the 90s, and he tried to distinguish between voting, party campaigning, collective action, contacting, direct action, and political violence. But there are also other attempts to categorize political participation. For example, we have still Sidney Verba, who is still alive, and he tried to categorize voting, campaigning, contact, and community. That is to say that he included the community engagement as a form of political participation. So at the end, there is a kind of, or there is more or less a consensus to distinguish between political participation, which is related to political institutions or public authorities, and civic engagement, which can include association or volunteering. But there is still a problem, because we don't really know whether various forms of political expressions should be included in the field of political participation. For example, some authors would prefer to talk about political expression, political attitude expression, or even expressive actions. For example, this means that for some people, talking politics or discussing politics with friends, family, and relatives is not political participation, because it doesn't aim to influence directly or even indirectly political outcomes. But for other people, when you discuss with politics, with your friends, with your family, with your relative, with your boyfriend, or whatever, you participate in politics. But this distinction is very hard, and of course we can already guess that when you look at what happens online, on discussing politics online, it's a very common thing. So it's very hard, and this is a point from there are controversy on what should be considered as political participation. Or even, I gave some example with the discussion online, but it could be also things like wearing a T-shirt with support for a candidate or a political idea. So we can say that the debate on the area of online political participation is renewed with the development of the internet and the social network. And because I'm sorry, I don't see on the slide what is behind me. And there are a lot of authors who stressed that there is actually a disagreement on the extent to which there are various forms of online participation constitute fundamentally new repertoire with little connection to existing forms, or, this is the other idea, whether there are simply translation of offline activities differing only in mode. I will give you some example. It's not exactly the quote that you have on the screen, but more or less, for some scholars, online political participation is just a transposition of what do exist offline. For example, chat or forum would be online version of public debates or meeting. You know, you translate only what do exist in the offline world online. But for other scholars, the boundaries between expression, mobilization, engagement, participation are not so clear. And we could see the emergence of new forms of political participation that have little to do with traditional political behavior. For example, when you tweet something, or when you are a follower of a political candidate, is it political participation? Is it political expression? Is it something else? I've put on the screen a choice. This is a choice of Michael Jensen and other colleagues. For them, there are clearly new forms of political participation, but it's not the main. It's not. Yes, it's not the main opinion in the academic literature. For example, the same Sidney Verba, who is again still alive, has written a report, a kind of report, where he said that when you discuss politics on Facebook, it's not political participation, because once again, the aim of your discussion is not to influence political outcomes or selection of government or public decisions. So Michael Jensen, as you can read on the screen, have written that digital media have enabled the creation of new modes of political participation that did not exist before, because people could use the web to diffuse their own political views through blogs or comments, upload videos with political content on YouTube, or join political groups in social networks. So till then, we have two positions for some scholars. Online political participation does not exist. For others, there are new forms of political participation. And for other scholars, it's not on the screen, we have to overcome this binary perspective, and we have to develop new concepts, which could be especially suitable for the analysis of new online practices. For example, we have two Spanish authors whose name is, in Spanish, Puig, Abril, and Rojas, who developed the concept of expressive political participation. That is to say, a form of political participation that entails the public expression of political orientations. And it seems that this concept of expressive political participation is especially fits with what we can see online when you are on Facebook and you give your opinion, for example, on what happened in Germany or what you think about Angela Merkel. You express an opinion, your view, and your view can be commented by your friends or relatives. And this is considered as political participation if we choose the framework of Puig, Abril, and Rojas. And then we have other attempts to categorize. You remind that a few minutes earlier I gave you some example of categorization, and we can see that voting, party campaigning, collective action, contacting, and so on cannot be used for what can be observed online. But I will go back later on the news categorization, because the research team to which I belong tried to produce a new categorization of online political actions. But whatever you can see, you can react and say, okay, we have an expressive political participation, but does it mean that everything is political participation. And this is the main point of the current debate in political science, to know whether a minimal form of interest, for example, when you like something on Facebook, you like the page of Angela Merkel. Okay, this is a minimal form of political interest, but should we consider this as a form of political participation, even a form of expressive political participation, or just the expression of an attitude which does not engage you in a political action? So there are two drawbacks in this very broad approach of political participation, or two drawbacks more generally, sorry. It's not a good way to express my point. Two drawbacks. The first is to broaden too extensively the concept of participation by considering that every single mode of online expression is participation, or if you prefer, can we say that online communication about politics is political participation? And on the contrary, if we narrow or reduce the action only to the question of the influence on governmental action or selection of government, we may forget that there are some action on the internet or through the Web 2.0 that there are political participation, at least intuitively, but without a theoretical framework. So that is why I said at the beginning that it's quite difficult to define online political participation, because I'm sure that you have already seen when you surf the web that there are some action that appear intuitively to be both political and participative. Write a post on Facebook about a candidate, political and participative. But if you choose the first or the second definition, the narrowest definition, it's not political participation. But it's not enough to speak about online political participation. And beyond this important question of this definition, we have other debates, which deal with the effects on the internet on political participation. And we can guess how difficult it could be to answer this question of the effects on the internet if we haven't a clear idea of what is political participation. So there are numerous questions about the effects on the internet, and I have chosen only one question, which is one of the most famous questions about the effects of the internet, is the question of Slacktivism. Sorry, it's not on the slide once again. And this is a very, very lively debate. Well, the question of the Slacktivism, or if you prefer, in a more soft way, the question of a new form of political consumerism. When I said a few minutes earlier, when you like something, it doesn't constrain you, it's meaningless, it doesn't cost a lot of effort to the people who like a post or who like a page on Facebook. And Slacktivism is indeed one of the major critiques that have been launched against political participation via the internet. This is something which has been developed by someone whose name is Evgeny Morozov. I don't know, maybe it's not on the slide, so I don't know if it's useful to write or the name. And for him, Slacktivism means that online activism is less effective or less influential, sorry. This is my French accent, less effective than traditional modes of participation. This is the first point, or more or less, it's useless. It's useless to talking politics online or to do something online about politics. And the second signification, or second meaning, is the online activities replace traditional offline participation. So it leads to lower levels of participation. In other words, if you do something online, if you like the page of Angela Merkel, maybe you can't go outside in the street to demonstrate, or you disagree with her political orientations. So this is the main critic about what we can do on the internet. So we have to question whether those new forms of political action are only slacktivism or constitute a genuine, I don't know, real venue for citizens to express their political preference or political orientation. So this leads, or this could lead to examine whether internet activities affect formal political decision. In our case, the campaign, because I'm going to speak about the campaign, or whether the internet participants are more or less prone to be politically active in more traditional forms of participation. This is exactly what I said a few minutes earlier. If you are active online, are you active in demonstration, in meetings, or in public reunions, and or in canvassing, and so on? So in this context, and I can maybe move to, I'm not sure if you have to tell me if it's not clear, because I can, okay. So I'm still in the introduction, and after this very broad overview of the debate on political participation and online political participation, since I'm working on the French web campaign last year, I'd like first to give you some trends of the web campaign, because the question that I've raised a few minutes earlier was the same question when we observe what happened during the French presidential election. So before move or go further in the observation of political practice during the campaign, I'd like first to give you some large indication. So, so this is a very short summary, because the first thing to say is that during the last presidential campaign in France, all political parties have set up numerous online devices. And I'd like to give you an example. I'm not sure that this is an example. So I don't want to give you all information about the campaign in France, but you know that it was an election win by François Hollande, but the first ballot opposed a lot of candidates, and you have on the screen all the websites devoted to a political party entitled Front de Gauche. Maybe you know the leader of the Front de Gauche, with Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, because it's not very... just here, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. So this is the political candidate at the first ballot. This is all the website used by the political party Front de Gauche, and this is all the website devoted to the campaign. So that's why I say numerous online devices. And maybe you have understood that I will first speak about the political strategy of candidates, and after I will speak about the practice of the internet users. So I give you some information on the strategy. So each political party has had more or less the same way to proceed, a lot of websites, and in addition there are of course Facebook page, Twitter account, and sometimes ad hoc online device, such, for example, web radio, web series. So a lot of online device which are supposed allow people to take part in the campaign, either online or in more traditional face-to-face mode. So at the end, you have maybe is it needed that I give some more information on this slide? I think it's clear enough. So this is the first trend of the web campaign in France: numerous online device. And the other trend, it's that the political party, all the political parties, have set up a private space on their official website. And I just would like to give you an example of that. I think, yes. So you have on the screen La France Forte, which is the, I don't know if some people here can speak French a little bit. La France Forte, in English or in German, the strong France, which is the website of Nicolas Sarkozy, the former president. And so he had a website, and inside or within the website, you can register yourself. So it's in a private space, and you have the possibility to make a lot of actions to support your candidate. So you have, sorry. So you have a very classical feature that you can find on social networking sites. So you have a map, and the mark on the map indicate the public events. For example, there is a public reunion, a public meeting in, I don't know, in Paris, or not in Paris, in Bordeaux, here, and you can register yourself to take part in the meeting. And you have, of course, the classical wall of France. You are a member of the supporter teams of Nicolas Sarkozy. And when you do a lot of things, you can win badges. You can have the fact that you are the best supporter of Nicolas Sarkozy. But François Bayrou, who is another candidate, did exactly the same thing. You can win, yes, badges, and here you can see what you have done till then for your candidates. And this is a very common feature on all political parties' websites. And of course, because it's Nicolas Sarkozy, you have still the feature of personalization, the guy himself. So this is, for example, another example, because I think it's a very interesting if you are interested in political strategy. For example, this one, yes, it's, so this is me. As you can see, I don't know, I am Stéphanie Wojcik, but I register myself on the website of François Bayrou, with another candidate. And this is quite different from what you have seen on the screen about Nicolas Sarkozy, because this is all the action that you are asked to do. And for example, this one, in French, ajouter une image de couverture sur votre journal, you have to add the image of François Bayrou on your Facebook journal, for example. Or here you have to share a video of François Bayrou with your friend. And you have to invite your friends and family to go to the next meetings, and so on. And when you do all these actions, and this is quite interesting, you earn points. Here, 7.8, 7, and so on. And the points mean that you, I can't translate, this is very hard. You of course, you can win badge. As you can see, I have 0 badge because I did nothing. Just to see, I did nothing for France Urban. And this is here, no action done. Yes. And so this is a representation of the strength of my voice. I earn points and my voice is raised. So this is the power of my voice on the internet. So I don't know if it's exactly the same word, decibel in German or in English. So the points are actually decibels. So I have no decibels because I did nothing for France Abreu, even if I am registered myself on the website. But just because, of course, you have understood for the purpose of the research. Because I register myself on every or each political party's website. So this is the second trend, quite important. And the last one that I would like to give you an example, because of course I can develop more if you're interested on the political strategy during the campaign, but it's not the main point of my presentation today, is the fact that political parties try to tell their supporters to comment broadcast events on the internet. This is a very common feature. You have on the screen an example. It's not maybe the clearer that I can find, but you have on the screen, of course, François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy during a broadcast debate, which is Des paroles et des actes. This is the title of the broadcast event. And you have on the screen the number of tweets which were made during the event. And of course, with high number of tweets, this is something that political party staff and the web campaign team incited the supporter to do. You look at the broadcast event today and go to Twitter and tweet for your candidate, and you can see that it's more or less the same thing, and maybe it's completely useless, but this is something that we can observe during the campaign. So there are the main trends of the campaign, and since my presentation is not about the strategy of political parties, but I think it's useful for you, because of course you don't really know what happened in France during this period. And in the research, in the collective research, we are interested in this part of the campaign, the strategy of political parties and the candidates, but also on the political practice. That's why I gave you a lot of information about what is online political participation. And since we have a lot of plethoric political offer by political parties, we are seeking to know all these political proposals have been taken over by citizens and by internet users. So we raised very basic or very simple question. And the first one is, are the tools proposed by political parties really used? Because when you have more than 20 websites, are citizens or internet users used this website? If you have a registration space, are internet users register in this private space? When you ask them to do live tweet, is it really the case? So this is the first question, and the second question, which is more related to the debate on Slacktivism, but is the more difficult to deal with, it's what is the meaning of this form of online political expression? Are they linked with offline political participation? That's exactly what I said to you a few minutes earlier. If you are on the internet, you're going to vote? Are you going to take part in public meeting? Are you going to discuss with your friend or with political candidates? And the second question is more related, once again, with the debate on Slacktivism. But it's the hardest to prove So that's why I'd like to stress that this is very preliminary result, and we have to discuss together on the validity of this research. So, the time. Just maybe a few words on methodology. Because this is an obligation for me to tell that. So this is a collective research project called inpolitics.com, Strategy, Content and Perception of the Political Uses of the Web During Election Campaigns, the case of the French presidential election and the Quebec provincial legislative campaigns. So today I'm not going to speak or to talk about the Quebec because it's not my main field of research, but we have two scientific responsible for this research, who are Fabienne Greffet from the University of Lorraine in France, and Thierry Giasson from the University of Laval in Quebec, in Canada. So as you have understood, of course, this is a comparative research project between two quite different elections, but in both cases we have tried to analyze the political strategy and the online political practices. So the general aim of this project is to elaborate a framework of the online strategies of parties. And more precisely, it's not on the slide, we try to check the award vision of the managed citizens. I don't know if I need to develop. I'm not sure, but maybe a few words on this. The awards vision of the managed citizens assumes that all political organizations are now using techniques of information management and digital technology. And these techniques have deep consequence over the internal functioning of these organizations and political representation in general. One of the main issues of this project is to show that the idea of a political supply and a demand are challenged by the development of the internet and the Web 2.0, because citizens can now contribute to the production of political discourses and to the campaign on a more daily and intense basis. So it was only a few words about this project, and maybe I can tell you that we tried to use 4 research methods: content analysis, interviews, focus group, and online survey. And this is online survey that I'd like to give you some insight today, because we carry out a quantitative survey with 817 French internet users during the presidential campaign, and of course we did the same with Quebecois, but later. And one of an interesting point of this methodology, and this is interesting and important, it's not a representative sample, because to build up our sample, we have first collected the tracts left by the internet user on the various online space. You remind that there are numerous online space offered by political parties, and you can leave a track. You can leave a post, you can leave a like, and we choose to select these tracks to select our internet users. So the tracks could be a comment on a candidate's website, a like on a Facebook page, or a retweet from an official Twitter account of a party. And then we have chosen a random selection of this track to get in touch with the internet users, to whom we have sent our questionnaire. And then we ask the internet user to disseminate the questionnaire amongst other internet users according to the snowball sampling methods. So it's not a representative sample, it's a sample made by internet users who did something during the campaign. So that's why at the end we reach 870 polled, and we excluded from our database, of course, political leaders, employees of political parties, and journalists. Some more information on our sample, because since it's not very representative, our sample is mainly composed of men. 62% of the sample are men, young, 36 are less than 30 years old, and highly educated people, because more than 50% of them are, like you, postgraduate, and more. They are also quite, I don't know if it's a good word to use here, geek, because their use of the internet are quite intensive. For example, 50% of the polled said that they used to surf the web at least once a day. They do the same thing with our email, and in a lesser extent with Facebook and with Twitter. For lesser extent, it means that, for example, we have only 45% of the polled who use Twitter at least once a day. And so they are highly educated, very interested with technical matters, if we can say that when you use Twitter, it's technical. And they are also very interested in politics, because more than 3/4 said that they are interested a lot in politics. You know, it's a list of items that they have to tick. And more than 9 on 10 of those polls has voted for the first and for the second round of the presidential election. And the last point, maybe it's the less, or it's a more complicated, I don't know. They are mainly left-wing orientated, because we struggle to reach right-wing. They didn't want to answer the questionnaire. It was very hard. So, not a sample which is not representative, but with a strong characteristic. I didn't put them on the screen. And now I'd like just, maybe just for between 5 or 10 minutes, give you some result, very preliminary result of the survey, which deals with political practice, and maybe we can have a discussion about the figures on the screen, because there are something which are very obvious and something which are less obvious. So the first slide, very, very simple. We ask them if they saw the political proposal of political party, and as you can see, and it's quite simple to say, our sample prefer to look at the website of the candidate of the party, whatever is the candidate of the party. There is no distinction at the moment between François Hollande, Nicolas Sarkozy, François Bayrou, and so on. It's everything in the same package, and so no surprise, I know, with this first slide. Of course, the Web 2.0 tools are not neglected, but they would prefer to consult or to see website compared with Facebook or Twitter thread of a candidate or a party. And we have also asked, this is a similar result, because we can see with this figure, that very few look at the website and Facebook and Twitter together. Almost all 1/3 have checked only one kind of tool. So there are not multi-consultations. They choose one online device and neglect the other. So basic information, but useful information, because we can wondering now, is it very useful for political parties to propose more than 20 websites to people, because people look only at one or two online political device. And the third slide is just a slide to, it's different, it's because I'd like to explain you something. So it's not me and it's not, I have no link with this guy. It's quite strange, but yes, he has exactly the same name than me. I don't know exactly why, I don't know who is. But I just like to give you an example of a specific online political network, because a few minutes earlier, I told you that there are registered space within official party websites. There are Facebook page, and also, that's why I said that there are a lot of online proposals made by political parties. There are also specific online social political network. And this is an example. La Coupole is a social networking site built up by the Socialist Party. So you have just an example of this with all the traditional features of social networking. So you have a public profile, or not really public. It's not really public because you have to register. So the quite more or less public profile, the guy, and the friends of the Alain Wojcik, and the number of these friends. And on the Coupole, the friends are named Coupin, which is a kind of word games with the name of the social networking website. And so we asked our sample if they used this kind of social networking. And this is the following slide. The answer is quite clear, I think. So you can see here La Coupole. It was the previous slide. And IILV, it's the same thing for the Green Party. Les Démocrates, the same thing for the Modem, led by François Bayrou. I just try to give some information because I can understand that it's quite difficult for German people to understand how political parties are organized in France. Planète UMP, this is the Union for a Popular Movement, it's the party of Nicolas Sarkozy. And Toile Bleu Marine, National Front, so the political party of previously Jean-Marie Le Pen, and now his daughter Marine Le Pen. So there's 5 political parties have social offer social networking site, and I put on the slide the most simple figures that I can find, because as you can see, I don't think that this is very, very successful. So this is quite the same question than previously. You have more than 20 websites, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have web series, you have web radio, you have registration spaces within your official website, and in addition, you have your social networking, and nobody used it.
So those are the people who didn't use those.
Exactly. Amongst our sample, yeah. I don't know, to be very clear, between or amongst our more than 800 people who are interested in politics, who know how the internet works. Nobody, okay, it's not nobody, it's it's 1.5 people of the sample who used the social networking site made by the Green Party. So one for the Coupole, but it's the same thing, whatever, because you can try to find some explanations of that, but actually the social networking or the social network made or built by political party are more or less similar. They offer the same thing. But, for example, the oldest one is the one made by the Socialist Party. So you can imagine that this is the most ancient, the oldest one. So it's going to be used more than the more recent, which is the one of the green, but it's not the case. So, to sum up, we can say that our sample is absolutely not interested in the social network set up by the political parties. And whatever the political party consider, or all along this social network does exist. Now we are moving to something which is a little bit different. Sorry, it's just kind of preliminary results, and maybe you have a distinct or different opinion. But we can say just right now that political offers are not very successful. But things are maybe going to change. So maybe this one, some more explanation are needed with this slide, because at the beginning of my presentation, I spoke a lot about political activities. That is to say that in this research, we have tried to make a list of political activity. What is possible to do on the internet with when you are interested in politics. This it's only the activities proposed by the candidate or the parties, but we have another part of the research where we have tried to list political activities beyond the scope of political parties. But for today, I narrow the scope of my presentation. So on the website of political party, you can open an account on the campaigning website. This is what I showed you a few minutes earlier. You can subscribe to a RSS flux available on the website. That is to say, you can be informed on the political party's activity. You can comment a post published on the Facebook page of the candidate or the party. You can follow the candidate, and you can, of course, download documents, leaflets, or more general information. And we have used a variable, a very classical variable, as you can see on the left part of the screen. We have tried to show if whether the fact to be party member or not has an influence on the activities. And it is quite clear that yes. It doesn't mean that if you are not a party member, you do nothing, but it means that if you are a party member, you do more than if you are not a party member. And I don't know if you have an idea of on this graph, but with my colleagues, we are just wondering if the most or the actions which are the most done are the most, sorry, it's the end of the presentation, it's a little bit hard. So we are just wondering with my colleague whether the actions made by the internet user of our sample are the most comfortable. I mean, download the document or follow a candidate is not very, don't cost a lot to people. So that's why this graph is related to the debate on Slacktivism. Are you going to make the less or the more comfortable action? You are not very involved in the campaign, you follow the candidate. It's not very, you're not very involved. And on the contrary, when you comment a post published on the Facebook page, you do more maybe for the campaign. So, but we don't agree between us. So maybe you have a different point of view on this graph. The main or the most simple comment that we can make on this graph is that those who undertake online political activities are most often party members. This is the most simple thing to say, and this is particularly true, especially for Twitter, because you have more than 90% of people who follow a candidate on Twitter in our sample are party member. So maybe I can show you some other result. So on this slide, it's quite a different result than previously, because we have extract the result for the people who have registered on the official website, because I told you previously that we have the sample, more than 800 of people, and within, amongst this more than 800 of people, there are people who register within the official website. And our question at the time is to understand how off and online activities can enter twin. It's still related to the debate on slacktivism or online activism, and it's to know if you are more keen to do things online or offline. And well, I have the comment in French on the screen. It's hard. Sorry. Just wait a minute, because I don't remember exactly what we have asked. Yes, something which could be considered as striking is the fact that the fact to have an account on a campaigning website don't favor the fact to join a meeting or work session, because it's the figure in red. This is the most common action made by the internet user. More than 65 people of our sample restricted to those who have an account on a candidate's campaigning website, they joined a meeting or a work session. So let's say a meeting. But we can see the thing quite differently. This is quite the same table than previously, with the same samples, that is to say 155. So. And we have just made a distinction between the activities proposed by the team of the candidate and the activities proposed by the internet user himself or herself. And we can see with these figures that actually people are more keen to do action proposed by the political party. They are not very autonomous. They don't really propose themselves some action. And maybe we can go back after that to this figure if you are interested in, but I'd like to have some time for the debate. Maybe the last, I don't know, the last, not the last, but almost the last. No, I'm aware that sometimes it could be quite boring to see figure without discussing, and our interpretation could be discussed. We are not completely sure of what we can say about this figure, because they are very, very descriptive at this stage. This table is the most simple, I think, of our result, because it's just a comparison between the online social network used by people and the online social network led by a candidate or a party. And when we ask people if they speak about the campaign, write a status or post a content related to the campaign, we can see that they prefer used their own pages than the pages of the candidates. So this is another question that I don't really develop at the beginning of my presentation, to know if people will prefer to make campaign or to speak about the campaign on the tools offered by political parties, or would they prefer to make campaign or to speak about the campaign on their own online devices. And we can see that apparently they would prefer to use their own tools. And the very last one, is, I promise. We have tried to examine the links between the social networks and the political activities offline. This is still related to the previous debate. And we have tried to know if the fact to, for example, do something online, stop you to go to the meeting. And as you can see on this slide, because there are very high figure, it doesn't seem to be the case for people to write a status or to write a tweet or even watching a meeting on an online video platform. And it's quite striking, because if you're watching the meeting online, maybe you can say, okay, I don't need to go to the meeting. But for more than almost 19% of our sample, they attend the meeting as well. So it doesn't seem that there is a contradiction between the fact to do something online and to do something offline. But this is some conclusion, or this conclusion have to be checked in the next future, because it's, I don't know if it's a point to raise here, but there is a difference between a correlation and an explanation. This is just, yes, I know it's a quite burning debate, but this is just a correlation. It's not one thing doesn't explain the other thing. It's not because you are on the meeting that you are watching online meeting. So that's why I say we have to check the result later. So, I know that you are happy because there are conclusions. We tried to elaborate a typology of online activist activities. I told you that before, because till now, and I show you only what is proposed by political parties, but we try to do the same thing about more free political activities which can be done on the internet or on social network. And we will follow up our initial question with the question that you have on the screen, and especially the second one, that is to say, we try to know whether some activities are favorited compared with other, and what is the explanation of that? It's because it's costless, or it's because it's less or more, maybe more influential, or other reasons. I don't know. We don't know until then, but maybe in 2 or 3 years we'll have some good answer. I don't know. So I will stop here, because I think I speak too long.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Thanks to you.